Welcome to the Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the transformation of work one conversation at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today it's time we ask the question that should be front and center in the world of work is changing. If we automate tasks, spread out the teams, integrate AI agents, who's holding it all together? If you've been listening to the Future of Less Work on a regular basis, you've heard me sign off every single episode with a clear future of work vision. Your best people do not work because you tell them to. They do not work because you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because by working for you, they're also doing what's important to them in life. Because as technology takes over more of the doing and workplaces become more distributed and asynchronous, it's clear that leadership needs to transform. The more different the how of work becomes, the more important it is to have managers who can build trust, foster connection, and help people thrive in uncertainty. That's what today's conversation is about, and why I'm delighted to speak with Jennifer Dulski. Jennifer spent her entire career leading large global teams at companies like Facebook, Google, and Yahoo. Today, she's on the faculty of Stanford Business School and is the founder and CEO of Rising Team, a platform designed to help managers become the kind of leaders people actually want to follow. Jennifer, welcome to the Future of Less Work.
Thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes, and I'm really glad you're here. You've had a front row seat to how leadership has evolved from Yahoo, Google, Meta, and now you're building Rising Team. When you look back at how we used to lead teams and then look forward to what leadership is becoming, what feels most different to you?
Yeah, so I've been doing this a long time, and the truth is, a lot has changed over the years, but there are two things that have driven the most change in my mind. The first is that work is now really distributed, right? So we had the pandemic, which caused a lot of remote work, and now people are debating about whether or not to be in the office. But the vast majority of companies and all the customers we work with have, at a minimum, distributed teams. So even if people are in an office, they're sometimes working with people who are on other sides of the world, and they're almost never in the office every day. So being able to lead when your team is not right around you is quite different. And then the other major factor is the rapid development of AI. So those of us who've worked in tech have seen a lot of changes over the years. We saw the dawning of the internet and mobile and streaming and all of these things. And yet AI is moving faster by something like 10x than any of those things ever did. And so I like to say the soft skills are the new hard skills for both of those reasons. One is that your team may not be near you and you need to be excellent at understanding people no matter where they are. And the second is that the tech is changing so rapidly that what we need to do is be great learners rather than be great at any one or the other hard skill.
So we should talk about that, because if we're being honest, we didn't select managers for their soft skills. In fact, we usually selected them because they were good at whatever hard skills of the day they were doing when we hired them to begin with. And now we need them to lead people, as you've said, across time zones, but we also need them to lead maybe integrated people in AI teams, which, we were guessing at where this is going. And then add to that the speed of change, the uncertainty, the disruption. We're not preparing them, are we? I haven't seen us prepare them
No, I
any
mean
different than
that's
before.
what we are working on at Rising Team, is to prepare managers for this new era. And the thing about it, the wonderful thing about the way technology is working is that we have the ability to prepare them in a way we never have before. So you are right, absolutely, that they are underprepared. And that's been true for a long time. It's just that the circumstances have gotten more challenging. And the great thing is that the tools we have at our disposal to prepare them are also better now than they were before. So if you think about something like executive coaching, it started that executive coaches were human and they were in person and they were very expensive. And only the most senior leaders in companies got
Yeah.
them, and they were really helpful. Then came the rise of virtual coaches. So companies started saying, we'll give you a coach. And now that everybody's meeting, on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever the platform, your coach can do that too. And that brought down the cost and gave coaches made them accessible to way more people in organizations. And now we have the rise of an AI coach. We have an AI coach called Artie. It is accessible and affordable to every person in an organization, not just now managers at every level, but every team member can have one. And that is dramatically different than what we did before. The second thing that's now really changing is team building and facilitation. So the first wave of disruption was coaching. The second wave is facilitation. So it used to be, again, you might hire an outside facilitator for just a senior team, or you might have an offsite for some part of your company once in a while. It was very expensive. And now what software can do and what we build at Rising Team, we can make anybody into a facilitator guided by software with their team, so that even people who've never facilitated anything, who were never trained to be managers, can now practice the behaviors of what the best managers do. And that wasn't really possible before.
So, basically, what you're saying, and we're seeing this across a lot of professions, right, is we can use AI to learn, and we can use AI to get some either real time feedback or review things that are happening and think about how we should have done that differently. I think the question in my mind right now is that those are the tools, and you're definitely right that we have them and they're great. But what about the content? So I've been thinking about this idea of management in an area where when people are working dispersed and more asynchronous, it's also not just you can't see them physically, it's how you define success, communicate, even the word build teams, right? I mean, I grew up in a world where you built a team, then you went from forming, norming, storming, performing,
Yes.
right? And if somebody left the team, you had to go all the way back. God forbid we're in that world today because we're shifting teams all the time, right? So the content of what is management and what we expect them to do, how's that changing?
Yeah. The really interesting thing is that I don't think the content is changing that much. So the research behind high performing teams and what drives them is fairly consistent over time. So things like making your team feel psychologically safe to speak up when they see problems, or helping them feel appreciated, or making sure they're clear on what's expected of them. Those things are constant. And not only are they constant, they are true across almost every team. So when we started building our content, we started with the drivers of high performing teams, and we made a kit for each one of those topics, because part of it was I was also so frustrated. I used to sit inside these big companies and run big teams, and I would get my pulse survey scores back, these
Three
engagement
months later,
surveys. What's that?
three
Yes.
months later.
Exactly. So you run
Yeah.
it takes 3 months to get it back. Then you get the results, and it's like, oh my God, back to the whiteboard every time. You just have no idea how to action them. And if you do nothing, that your team will feel like you're not listening to them.
Yeah.
So we were all the time trying to figure out how to action them. And so we basically started building content on those topics: feedback, expectations, appreciation, working styles, et cetera. And what we found is that just going through using that standard content is working to drive up engagement, retention, team effectiveness, leader effectiveness on all kinds of teams. It doesn't matter whether you work at a bank or a tech company or a school or in the government. The content is really the same. And that's honestly one of the things that has surprised me most about getting into this field.
It's interesting because we talk about the human aspect of the tech world, right? And ultimately, what you're saying is we're still humans, right? So you need to know that somebody cares about you, somebody sees you, they're talking to you, they're relating to you. Um, do you think the traits of being what makes us human or valuable as humans, right, in an AI infused world of work, do you think they will shift?
I do believe that what we spend our time on will shift. So if we look at what makes up the day to day of people's roles, a lot of the sort of computational and repetitive tasks are really going to shift into AI. And in a way that leaves us more room for the humanity that we have and that is so important to making effective teams. So, I have you watched the movie Top Gun Maverick?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I am a big Top Gun fan. I was a teenager when the first Top Gun came out, and I embarrassingly saw it 9 times in the theater. But when the second one came out, I also went immediately to see it. And there, the premise of the movie is that they're trying to do some really important, critical, earth-saving mission. And then one day, Tom Cruise takes this team out to the beach to play, flag or touch football or something. And the admiral comes and says, "What are you doing here? We only have a few days to train the team for this critical mission." And Tom Cruise looks at him and he says, "You told me to create a team, sir."
Yeah.
And the truth is, it doesn't mean that you need to play football together. You just need to pay attention to people. And that is something, it's true that AI can do that. Now, many people have AI coaches, as I said, and AI therapists. But we still know that more than 50% of people leave their companies because they have a bad manager. And what makes a great manager is someone who understands you, who values you, and who helps support you towards reaching your goals. And
So,
so, the time people spend doing those activities, I believe, will be more than they used to be.
I am wholeheartedly in agreement with this, right? But when you look at what leaders seem to be doing as they're bringing in AI, it's almost like a, an Excel, right? I'm going to bring in tools and remove people, right? And it's a productivity game, which ultimately, if I always take it to the extreme and I call it, trying to get that $1 billion company with no people, right? Which feels like we think that people are just hands and, working hands and thinking heads, and that there's no, I don't know if I should use the word heart, but that there's no kind of nuanced human value that makes you you, that makes your company who you are. And when you just simply say, okay, I can, bring in tools, remove some people, it feels like we're going to risk losing who we are. And I look at this and I look at managers, and managers are the glue that holds this together, right? They're ultimately who the employee meets when they call, "I'm at the company," right? It's that interaction. How do
Yes.
we make sure that they shift from the things we used to teach them, which is, like, we still need to talk to them about how to set goals and how to, measure success, but we need some deeper um, soft skill, power skill, human skills in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so this is exactly what we do at Rising Team. We build it is software, but it is software for guided conversations. So an example might be, okay, you're going to take the kit on appreciation. You know that your team maybe is feeling underappreciated by you. And so instead of having to come up with all this kind of thing on your own, you basically use a guided conversation, which starts with, let me ask everybody how they want to be appreciated. Because as it turns out, people want different things.
Yeah.
I developed this tool because early in my career, I had a woman on my team who came to me and she said, if I ever do a good job, could you just pay me more money? She said, I'd like a spot bonus or something like that. I don't care about being recognized publicly. I don't even care about being thanked. And I was completely taken aback by that. I thought, wow, that's really crass. And then as I thought about it more, the more I realized if she didn't tell me, I would get it wrong. And one of the most common manager mistakes is that managers think everybody's just like them. And
Yes.
it's just not true. So we take our own preferences and we lay them on other people when really we need to learn about preferences. So now, again, in this guided conversation, you can say, how often do you like to be appreciated? And when I appreciate you, what would you like? Like, I have some people on my team who really just want to be asked for their input. I have other people who really like gifts. They'd like a custom, gift. And don't confuse those people because they will be not satisfied if you do. And then the second part of that session is what we call appreciation circle, where everybody gets 2 minutes to be appreciated by the team. And different people say things that they appreciate about them. And so in learning the behavior. Now they are practicing the behavior, which then makes them better managers. And in between these kind of practice conversations, that's where AI comes in. I think about it when I was a manager of, just direct reports. Even when I asked them about these kinds of preferences, I would pretty regularly forget what they told me because I don't have perfect memory. And that's one of the things that AI does have. So now we can feed this information into an AI coach, and I can say, gosh, Sarah's burned out. How can I support her? And it will tell me specific things about Sarah, or how does Sarah like to be appreciated? And it will remind me. That is where AI makes you a better manager. What it can't do is have the conversation for you. So I do agree with you on that point. Like, you can practice with AI, but in the end of the day, you and I have to look at each other in the eye and have that conversation.
Yeah, you almost read my mind there because I was thinking of professors at university that are complaining about what they call AI plagiarism, right? So you give me an assignment, I'm going to put it into Chat GPT and paste it back on, as the assignment. So it's almost like, are we relying on AI to do the management for us and become um, just the human conduits, right? Or
Yeah.
are we able to teach people what they need to learn about the human connection piece that is
Yeah.
ultimately their job?
I am very optimistic about the latter. I do agree that it is possible. And part of the reason I feel this way is because I also teach, I teach at the business school at Stanford. And originally, when Gen AI first became available, we were allowed as instructors to say whether it would be allowed to use in our class or not. Now we are all told that it has to be acceptable in our class. And so that means people use AI all the time. My class is role play based. So we give them cases, they're really hard situations, and then they have to come in prepared to role play it with either myself or the guest who is the protagonist of the case. And what I say is, AI can help you write your very first script. So, if I'm thinking about my objective and what I want to get across in the role play, I can ask AI and it can draft something to me. The minute I get into that conversation, boy, I better have some other skills available to me because AI isn't going to help me there. And now AI also can help you role play. We're about to launch that in Rising Team. And actually, we can even help you role play with the person because we know so much about that person. But at the end of the day, it's just a role play. And you have to have the actual conversation. So, what I tell my students is feel free to use AI and then practice with real people too, because it just it's helpful and it's insufficient.
I think in a way, you're also saying, like every other job, management has portions that we will offload to AI because we can. And then
Yes,
there's the portions that you're going to have to get really good at because only you can do. And if you won't do them, you're not going to be a good manager. And then ultimately, you won't be a manager.
that's right. And in fact, when people say, when they think about using Rising Team and they say, can I make all my bad managers better? And what I say to them is, look, we can make good managers amazing and we can make mediocre managers really good. My goal is to help really bad managers understand that they're not meant to be a manager. Because if you don't like it, so I have now one single predictive question that I can tell you to ask to know whether someone will be a great manager,
Please.
which is, how do you feel about spending 2 to 3 hours a quarter getting to better understand your team? And if they
2 to
say
3
yes,
hours a quarter, I'm almost surprised that that's very little.
I know it is surprisingly little. So, the number one pushback we get when we say you need to do these synchronous sessions with your team is, I don't have time. I'm so busy working on my goals and trying to hit my numbers and so forth. And I say, okay, we have made it less than 1% of your time. All our data shows that in 2 to 3 hours a quarter of intentional building understanding time, we move up engagement, retention, intent to stay, ENPS, all those numbers move. You need very little time, but you need some. And the folks who won't do it, who think it is not important, not only do they not get better over time, but their engagement scores start from a lower place. So I
Yeah.
now have all the baselines and I can see who
Okay.
starts at a higher level and who doesn't. And the people who don't want to do it are the managers that really aren't meant to be managers.
So this intentional 2 3 hour a quarter time, what that does is raise awareness for how I operate the rest of the quarter, or is that
It
just
it
practice?
does a few things. So the first is that it makes your team actually feel valued by you. So when you say, I don't have even 1% of our team time to stop and ask you what you care about and your needs and preferences and help you grow, then people feel unvalued and that makes them want to leave. So it is the first is the pure signal of the time investment in you as a person. And this is not surprising, right? Like if you were dating someone who never paid attention to you, or if your parents never pay attention to you, you also don't feel
Yeah,
fulfilled and
and that doesn't
productive.
even feel like AI related or even new,
It's not.
frankly. I mean,
It's
it's,
not. That's
we always taught leadership to be better leaders and managers.
That's right. So that is the first thing that it does in the 2 to 3 hours is the signal. The second is that it has transformed the way learning works. So traditionally, when we teach managers, we put them in cohorts and we teach them by themselves. So we either hire a facilitator or give a virtual facilitator or video, and we say things like, to build psychological safety in your team, you need to make a comfortable space for your team to speak up, and to do that you need to be slightly vulnerable with your team and so forth, and they get it all in a room by themselves, and then they have to figure out how to go back and translate that to their team. So I call it the fishing pole problem. Like when I was a manager and then a leader of, thousands of people, I was trained by amazing people and I had great coaches, and I say it was like being taught to fish and then going back to the lake with a binder. Like I had no fishing pole to use with my team. So now that the software and AI can help you run the activities, as an example, you take something like psychological safety, and when you do it in a guided conversation with the whole team, then there's a spot in the session where it says, Manager, please go first. Share a story about something you've struggled with at work.
So which
And all of
works
it,
in a digital meeting, right? Doesn't work if
it works
you're
in a
just
digital or in person. It works both ways. It's just that learning has moved from manager only cohorts to team based.
yeah.
And when you teach the whole team together, then you uplift
Okay,
the
so you're
whole team.
telling the team that you're telling the manager to go first.
They're all together. So
Yeah,
this is
I
an
get it,
action.
I get
Yeah,
it. You're
exactly.
basically it's not a
Yeah.
behind the scenes. Because for a second, I was thinking I just wrote an article on Forbes about, a voice AI and ambient AI, right? So this idea that you can get information in real time when you need it, and it's just kinda there for you, and I think you're going in that direction.
Yes, this is software guided, so it's not AI by itself,
Yeah,
although
yeah.
we are working on, there are some AI elements already. So, for instance, if people struggle with coming up with ideas, so I need to make an action plan, how do I come up with it? It's already in the software. We're working on now the idea that AI might also be able to be turned on to listen and help support in those moments. We do have to balance people's comfort level. Like one of the
Yes.
things we're very focused on is, for instance, people do get very vulnerable and open in these sessions, and we are super strict about the privacy of that data because
Yep.
they're typing it in. We want that team to be able to remember it, but we don't want anyone outside that team to be able to see it
And do
because it
you
wasn't
find
meant.
that people will go along with that, so they're able to become open in a setting that listens or reads or, documents what they're
So
saying?
far we don't have it listening, but we do have people typing into it, and absolutely they are incredibly open and vulnerable with each other. And part of the reason that works is because we've taken the traditional path facilitators do and we warm them up into it. You don't
Yeah.
start with a question that's super deep and intensive. You start with a lightweight warm up and then you build to it. And the main thing is that anyone can do that. And I'm not saying we're replacing amazing facilitators. Like those people, the same way humans will always have a role in the age of AI, excellent leadership facilitators will also always have a role. It's just they can't scale. So big companies right now, even if I look at my own company, I can afford one offsite a year for my company in person. What do I do the rest of the year? I need
Yeah.
something to make people understand each other, collaborate better, feel more
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah. And I do truly believe it's going to get more complicated because I do think that as we bring in agents into the mix and
Yeah,
um,
you have AI
more
team members. Yeah.
yeah, and what people will work with agents. First of all, when people start working with agents, they need to deploy management skills that we've never taught them, right? Because
Yes.
you have to tell the agents a lot of things that a manager learns to do with a team, right? So, and now
Yes.
you change the dynamics of the team, so it gets really interesting.
We were just talking about that this week. So, first of all, we do a number of AI hackathons at our own company because I want everybody in the company to be well versed in AI. When we did the first one in 2023, everyone went through AI boot camp. They had to learn how to use the tools. And then we went into teams and built a bunch of things, one of which became RD, our AI coach. Now, next month, we're doing AI agent hackathon where everyone's doing agent boot camp and then building tools with agents. And we were having this exact discussion because of, we are a company that focuses on making more equipped, better, more successful managers. And what does it mean to manage an
Yeah,
agent? And we have what we call the 3 C's: clarify, coach, and connect. And my belief is that the best managers of humans are like great sports coaches. They clarify what winning looks like, where are we going, who's doing what. They coach, which is they understand each person's needs, wants, preferences, skills, and talents, and they help that person be most successful, put the right people in the right
yeah,
spots.
right job. Yeah,
And then, yes, connect is how do you make it feel like a team? So it's something you want to be a part of. And when we started thinking about managing agents, the clarify C becomes way more important. And the coach C is there a little bit. You're coaching it on its own skills, but not in the way that it wants to be developed, right? It's, human beings want a promotion, they want to rise up on the ladder. Agents don't yet want that or need that. And the connect piece is interesting. You want them to work effectively together as a team. The skills and the techniques to do that will be very different than what it takes to make a human team come together.
yeah. I think we'll time will tell. I actually I wrote about this recently.
I
Tried to
saw it.
compare the content, the skill sets of first line managers, right? The things
Yeah.
we taught them, and the skills we need to give people who are. So you're right. The different connect, right? But context setting is very important.
Yes.
And it's a different coach, but having that back and forth versus the copy paste. What does it thinking mean today? And a lot of the thinking is working together, working through something that isn't you, which is what we teach first line managers. So it's going to be really, really interesting. I was going to ask you if you actually take a look at, I don't know if we can say 5 years these days, but a few years into the future, what do you think will most surprise us about the skills that managers and leaders are going to need?
As I said up front, I really believe that soft skills will be the most important skills here. And when I say soft skills, I mean not just empathy and compassion, but also learning agility and initiative, those things. So, not coding and agent building and so forth, because
Yeah,
what we do today is going to be dramatically different, even 2 months, 3 months from now, much
yeah,
less 5 years. Like the
yeah.
key is we will have to be able to learn as fast as possible to practice and adapt to new things. That will be the most important skill for both ICs and managers. And then managers, I still believe I don't see a day where all people do is manage agents. At some point, people will have to work together to build things, and those people will still need empathy and understanding and appreciation and all those things. So that's my sense: is be able to learn fast, adapt. I mean, even today, when I think about what's been my most valuable skill, I think it is context switching and learning
Mm,
agility. Like I have in my career alone, I have worked in so many categories and industries and B2C and B2B and autos and education and activism and tech. And if I couldn't learn quickly, switch contexts, et cetera, I don't think I would have been successful. And that will only be more important.
Yeah, yeah, that one's really interesting. Okay, thank you for that. I'm gonna wrap up with I always wrap up with actually asking you for a question versus an answer. So, what do you think is the one question we should all be asking ourselves about the future of work?
Well, when you say what's the question we should be asking ourselves, I think about how people can live happy, fulfilled, and impactful lives, partially because I spend a lot of my time with students. And so that's the question I would ask people to think about. It's interesting, and this is going to go deep here for a minute, but um, I read this book called The Measure. Have you heard about this book?
No.
Um, so it is a book where the premise is that one day everyone on earth wakes up and has a box outside their door, and inside the box is a piece of string. And that piece of string is of different lengths, and they determine that the length of the string ties to the length of your life. And then it is a whole question about who looks at the length of their string and who doesn't, and what different choices people make, and so forth. And I realize we're also in an era of longevity tech and all of that, where our lives hopefully will get much longer and much more successful. But if we all were to look at our lives as a piece of string and know that they were finite rather than infinite, then when we think about work, how can we choose work that really fulfills us and feels impactful? You know, at the end of our lives, at the end of that string, people don't say, I wish I had another car, or I wish I sat on one more board, right? They say, did I do anything that matters? Did I spend time with people I care about? And no matter how much AI we put into the world, I think those are the questions we'll still be asking ourselves.
Perfect. You know, I called this podcast The Future of Less Work, not in the dystopian version, but because I truly believe we woke up to that. I mean, we've been seeing this for a while now, even before COVID. But we woke up to the fact that life is short. We do have that string, right? COVID taught us that every day we go to work as a day of our life, we exchange it better be worth it. And we're seeing what I call the changing social contract ever since then. And I think it's the future of less work that doesn't matter and more of what does. And that's a
Yes.
lot of the negotiation that's going on out there in terms of what people are willing to do and not.
Yeah.
It's not the mechanics of do I work in an office or not. It's something I think it's a lot broader than that.
That's right. And the companies that realize that and act on it will be the most successful as well. I completely agree with you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining me today. To learn more about Jennifer's work and Rising Team, check out the links in the podcast description. Thank you for listening to The Future of Less Work. And remember, your best people do not work because you tell them to or you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because by working for you, they're doing what's important for them in life. Until next time.